Breaking news that's sending shockwaves through the tennis world. Eala just shattered every expectation, every precedent, every traditional rule about what it means to be a tennis star in Southeast Asia. A jaw-dropping $1 million endorsement deal with Levi's, the iconic denim empire, and the entire WTA world is absolutely reeling. Nobody saw this coming. At just 19 years old, she's obliterating every conventional wisdom about sponsorships, marketability, and what you need to achieve before brands invest in you at this level. This changes everything. Not just for Alex, not just for Philippine tennis, but for every young athlete from a non-traditional tennis country who has ever been told their dreams are impossible, that they don't fit the mold, that they should be realistic and give up. But this isn't just a story about money, about a massive paycheck that most players ranked in the top 50 would kill for. This is about a girl from Manila who was told repeatedly she'd never make it, that tennis wasn't for people like her, that her dreams were foolish and impossible. Now she's standing at the center of the global stage, the face of one of the world's most recognizable brands, forcing everyone to reconsider what they think they know about sports marketing and representation. The question burning in everyone's mind, the debate raging across social media and tennis forums worldwide, is this the beginning of something absolutely legendary, a career that will inspire generations? Or is this crushing pressure that could destroy a young player still finding her way, still establishing herself on the brutally competitive WTA tour? Eala wasn't supposed to be here. The odds were stacked impossibly, almost comically against her from the very beginning. Born in Manila, raised in a country where tennis is barely a whisper in the sports landscape, completely overshadowed by basketball, boxing, and volleyball, she grew up watching legends like Serena Williams and Maria Sharapova on a grainy, flickering television screen, dreaming what must have seemed like impossible dreams. While other kids in her neighborhood dreamed of volleyball championships or basketball stardom, following the traditional paths to athletic glory in the Philippines, Alex gripped her tennis racket like it was the only thing keeping her alive, her lifeline to a different future, a future that didn't yet exist for someone like her. Her parents saw something extraordinary burning inside her from an incredibly young age. A devastating fire. An unbreakable refusal to settle for ordinary, to accept the limitations that geography and economics tried to impose. But raw talent alone doesn't pay for flights to Europe for tournament competition. It doesn't cover crushing coaching fees that can run into tens of thousands of dollars annually, endless tournament entries with their registration costs and travel expenses, or the brutal, soul-destroying grind of the junior circuit where most families burn through their savings, chasing dreams that never materialize. Her family sacrificed everything, and I mean absolutely everything. Her father worked brutal double shifts day after day, year after year, his body breaking down but his commitment never wavering. Her mother transformed into her manager, her fierce motivator, her unwavering anchor through every storm, every setback, every moment of doubt. They sold properties, liquidating assets they'd spent years accumulating. They borrowed desperate amounts of money from relatives, from banks, from anyone who would take a chance on this crazy dream. They bet everything, their entire future, their financial security, their comfortable life, on a dream that most people in the Philippines thought was absolutely impossible, frankly insane even. Because let's be brutally honest for a moment. When was the last time you heard of a Filipino tennis player shattering their way into the global elite, competing with the best players in the world on equal terms? Never. Not once in modern tennis history. The country had produced basketball legends who dominated Asian competition and boxing champions who became global icons, most notably Manny Pacquiao, who transcended sport entirely. But tennis? That was perceived as a privileged Western sport, a rich kid's game played at exclusive country clubs by people who summered in Europe and trained at academies most Filipinos couldn't even dream of affording. And Alex was fighting desperately, clawing with everything she had to prove that it could be hers too, that geography and economics didn't have to be destiny. At 12 years old, an age when most kids are still figuring out who they are and what they like, Alex did the unthinkable. She left home. She moved thousands of miles away to Spain to train at the Rafa Nadal Academy in Mallorca, one of the most prestigious, most competitive tennis academies in the entire world. Picture this for a moment and really let it sink in. A 12-year-old child, alone, thousands of miles from everything she's ever known, from everyone who loves her, from the only home she'd ever experienced. Surrounded by kids speaking languages she couldn't understand, kids drowning in wealth she'd never even imagined, kids whose parents could afford anything they needed without a second thought. The homesickness was absolutely crushing her soul, a constant ache that never went away. The pressure was suffocating, relentless, brutal, unforgiving in ways that would break most adults, let alone a child. The cultural isolation was profound. The training was harder than anything she'd experienced. The competition was fiercer. The expectations were impossible. But Alex didn't break. She refused to break. She trained harder than anyone else at the academy, earning respect through sheer work ethic. She studied the game like her life depended on it, because in a very real sense, it did. Her family had bet everything on this moment, this opportunity. She absorbed every devastating lesson, every crushing loss, every moment of soul-destroying doubt, and somehow, impossibly, transformed it all into pure fuel, into determination that only grew stronger with each obstacle. The junior circuit became her battlefield for survival, her proving ground. She shocked everyone, including herself probably, by winning the Australian Open girls doubles title in 2020, a Grand Slam title at the junior level that announced her arrival on the global stage. She climbed the rankings against impossible odds, beating players from countries with far superior tennis infrastructure and resources. Coaches started whispering her name in hushed, reverent tones, recognizing something special. Scouts took notice, seeing potential that could translate to professional success. Media in the Philippines went crazy, celebrating her as a national hero, the girl who was doing what no Filipino had done before. But here's the devastating truth about tennis that casual fans don't fully understand. Junior success guarantees absolutely nothing in the professional world. Nothing. The gap between being a promising junior and a legitimate WTA contender is absolutely massive, a chasm that most players can never cross no matter how talented they are. The tennis graveyard is littered with the broken dreams of players who couldn't make the jump, who dominated junior competition and then disappeared into obscurity. Players who burned out spectacularly under the increased pressure. Players who ran out of money before they could establish themselves professionally. Players who simply weren't mentally prepared for the brutal psychological warfare of professional tennis where the margins are razor thin and the pressure is relentless. Alex knew this terrifying reality intimately. She felt the crushing weight of it pressing down on her every single day, a constant reminder that junior success was just the beginning, not the destination. Because back home in the Philippines, she wasn't just another promising young player trying to make it on the tour. She was a living symbol of hope for an entire nation. She was hope itself, embodied. She was the proof that Filipinos could compete and dominate on the world stage in a sport that had always seemed impossibly out of reach. And that kind of pressure, that weight of representing millions of people's dreams and aspirations, it can absolutely destroy you, crush you under expectations you never asked for but can never escape. But it can also forge you into something unbreakable, something legendary, if you're strong enough to channel it properly. By the time she turned 18, Alex had tasted the brutal reality of the WTA Tour firsthand. She'd fought through qualifiers, 3 rounds of matches just to get into the main draw of tournaments, often losing heartbreakingly close. She'd battled through challenger events, the minor leagues of professional tennis where prize money barely covers expenses. She'd earned her first precious main draw appearances at WTA events through sheer will and determination, refusing to accept that she didn't belong. The results were maddeningly inconsistent, as they always are for young players finding their way. Some weeks she'd look like a future top 20 player. The next she'd lose in the first round to someone ranked outside the top 200. But the potential was absolutely undeniable to anyone watching closely. She had the ground strokes, powerful and consistent from both sides. She had the fight, the refusal to give up even when matches seemed lost. She had that rare, completely unteachable grit that separates legends from everyone else, that makes champions keep fighting when others would quit. And slowly, quietly, almost imperceptibly at first, the tennis world started paying serious attention. Something special was emerging from the shadows, a player who might actually make the leap from promising junior to legitimate professional threat. There's a critical moment in every athlete's career, a pivotal point where opportunity collides with preparation, where destiny reveals itself if you're ready to seize it. For Alex, that moment came in the scorching summer of 2024. She wasn't ranked in the top 100 yet, still grinding in the challenger events and smaller WTA tournaments. She hadn't won a WTA title, hadn't made a breakthrough run at a major tournament. By traditional metrics, she was still very much a work in progress, a developing player with potential but no proven results at the highest level. But she had something that numbers could never measure, something that spreadsheets and ranking algorithms couldn't capture. She had a story that could change everything, that could transcend sport entirely. And in the modern era of sports marketing where authenticity and connection matter. As much as trophies, where athletes are brands and social media reach translates directly to commercial value. Stories sell like nothing else. Athletes who can inspire, who can connect emotionally with millions of people, are worth their weight in gold to the right brands looking to make cultural statements rather than just selling products. Her breakthrough wasn't a single match or tournament victory. It was something more organic, more powerful. It was a revolution that happened gradually and then all at once. It was a series of jaw-dropping performances that ignited social media like wildfire, each one building on the last, creating momentum that became impossible to ignore. A three-set comeback in a challenger final where she saved 4 match points, 4 separate times when she was 1 point from defeat, refusing to die, fighting with everything she had. The tennis was spectacular, but what really captured people was the emotion, the visible determination, the refusal to accept defeat. A heartbreaking post-match interview where she spoke about her family's devastating sacrifices with tears streaming down her face. Raw emotion captured for the world to see. No media training, no carefully crafted message, just honest feelings pouring out. She talked about her parents selling their home, about missing birthdays and holidays, about the guilt of being so far away, about the pressure of knowing that so many people had sacrificed so much for her dream. Millions watched that interview. Millions cried with her. It went viral not because it was polished, but because it was real. A viral clip of her celebrating a tournament victory by wrapping herself in the Philippine flag, her voice cracking with overwhelming emotion as she thanked her parents in Tagalog, her native language, speaking from the heart to the people who had made everything possible. That clip was shared millions of times across social media platforms, transcending the tennis world entirely. Filipinos around the globe, many of whom had never watched a tennis match in their lives, suddenly felt connected to this young woman who was representing them on the world stage, who was proving that Filipinos could achieve anything. The tennis purists, the people who care only about rankings and results, saw exceptional talent and potential for future success. But the world, the millions of people on social media, the brands looking for authentic stories to tell, they saw something far more powerful. They saw a warrior who refused to quit. They saw a fighter battling impossible odds. They saw authenticity in an age of carefully curated personas and corporate-approved messaging. They saw someone they could believe in, could root for, could invest emotionally and regardless of match results. Brands started circling like sharks sensing blood in the water, recognizing that Alex represented something commercially valuable beyond traditional athletic metrics. Small endorsements came first, local companies in the Philippines eager to attach themselves to her growing fame. Regional sponsors desperate to tap into her explosive, rapidly growing fan base that was becoming more passionate and engaged by the day. Sports drinks, athletic wear, telecommunications companies, all wanting a piece of the Alex Eala phenomenon. But Alex and her team, which by this point included her mother, and some trusted advisors who understood both tennis and business, were incredibly patient, strategic, playing the long game rather than grabbing quick money. They knew that signing with the wrong brand too early could lock her into a devastating deal that undervalued her explosive potential, that would look foolish in hindsight if she continued her upward trajectory. They waited. They built her social media empire strategically, posting content that was authentic and engaging, that told her story in her voice. They crafted a narrative that was genuine, emotionally devastating in its honesty, and absolutely impossible to ignore. They turned down offers that didn't feel right, that wanted to change who she was or how she presented herself. Then the serious offers started flooding in, the kind of game-changing opportunities that separate good careers from legendary ones. Nike reached out, the dominant force in tennis sponsorship that dresses most of the top players in the world. Adidas expressed intense interest, another major player in the sports marketing landscape. These were the brands that every young tennis player dreams of signing with, the partnerships that validate you as having truly arrived on the global stage. But the most shocking, most unexpected call came from a brand that most tennis observers wouldn't have predicted in their wildest dreams. Levi's, and nobody, absolutely nobody, saw that coming. The iconic denim empire, a brand known for its rebellious spirit, dating back generations and massive cultural relevance that transcended any single product category, was aggressively expanding its footprint in Asia. They weren't searching for just another tennis player to slap their logo on and forget. Another transactional endorsement deal where an athlete wears their clothes in exchange for money. They wanted someone who embodied raw resilience against impossible odds. They wanted unfiltered authenticity in an age of manufactured personas. They wanted the courage to defy expectations, to shatter every conventional rule. They wanted someone who represented something bigger than sport. They wanted Eala. The negotiations were absolutely intense, conducted over weeks with lawyers and agents and brand executives all weighing in. Levi's wasn't offering a standard, forgettable endorsement deal where Alex would do a photo shoot and make some social media posts. This was something unprecedented in scope and vision, something that had never been done before for a player at her ranking level. They were proposing a revolutionary multi-year partnership worth over $1 million, an amount that would make her one of the highest-paid endorsers in women's tennis, despite being ranked outside the top 100. The deal positioned Alex as the face of their explosive new Built to Last campaign, a global initiative that would span continents and media platforms. This was historic, genuinely historic. No player ranked where Alex was ranked had ever secured this kind of deal from a major global brand. Ever. The numbers were staggering. The scope was unprecedented. The implications were enormous. The concept was devastatingly simple in its clarity, but incredibly powerful in execution. The campaign would highlight extraordinary individuals who overcame crushing adversity to achieve greatness, people who refused to accept the limitations society tried to impose, who built something lasting despite every obstacle. Alex would dominate global advertising campaigns across television, print, and digital media. Fashion shoots in major magazines, not just tennis publications, but mainstream fashion media. Digital content that would be distributed worldwide across social media platforms and streaming services. She'd be featured alongside musicians, artists, and activists, cultural icons from completely different fields, not just athletes. She wouldn't be positioned as just a tennis player, but as a cultural force, a movement. This wasn't just a sponsorship deal where a brand pays an athlete to wear their products. This was cultural revolution, a statement that tennis and sports marketing were changing, that representation mattered, that stories could be as valuable as statistics. It was positioning Alex as a symbol of something bigger than herself, bigger than tennis, bigger than any single achievement. She represented the outsider, the underdog, the person who refuses to accept that their dreams are impossible just because nobody like them has achieved them before. But here's where everything gets dangerously complicated, where the fairy tale narrative starts to crack and reality intrudes. Alex was still desperately fighting to establish herself on the brutal WTA tour, still trying to break into the top 100 consistently, still proving she belonged at the highest level. Her ranking hovered frustratingly around 120, nowhere near the elite top 20 where the biggest stars compete. She hadn't won a WTA main draw match in months, going through a rough stretch where results weren't coming and confidence was shaky. The gap between her current results and her marketing value was creating serious tension. And yet, she was about to become one of the highest paid endorsers in women's tennis outside the top 50, earning more from sponsorships than many players ranked far above her earned from prize money and endorsements combined. The optics were explosive, controversial, guaranteed to generate intense debate and criticism. The optics were dangerously tricky, a potential public relations nightmare if not handled carefully. Was Levi's betting on her future potential, believing she would eventually achieve the ranking and results to justify the investment? Or were they simply capitalizing cynically on her marketability, knowing her story would resonate powerfully regardless of her on-court results? That they could sell jeans whether she won Grand Slams or never cracked the top 50? The debate was fierce, dividing the tennis community into passionate camps with very different views on what this deal represented. Alex's team debated internally for weeks in tense, heated discussions that went deep into the night and tested relationships. Her coach warned her seriously about the crushing pressure this would create, the expectations that would follow, the criticism that would come if results didn't match the hype. How do you handle being paid like a champion when you haven't won championships yet? Her mother worried desperately about the scrutiny that was coming, the inevitable backlash from people who would resent a young player getting this opportunity, about whether Alex was mentally and emotionally ready for what this would unleash. They discussed turning it down, waiting another year or two until her ranking justified this level of investment. But ultimately, Alex made the decision herself. She was 19 years old, legally an adult, and this was her career, her life, her choice to make. She believed in what the deal represented, not just financially, but culturally and symbolically. She understood that this was bigger than her ranking, that it meant something to millions of people who saw themselves in her story. And she decided to bet on herself, to accept the pressure and the criticism and the impossible expectations, because that's what champions do. They don't wait for perfect circumstances. They create them.